again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal. Three of the fans want one. Score! On the board! Paul Kariya!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Forever Mighty Post-Game Show. It's it's been fun on chat all day today, boys. We're going to talk about the Ducks win tonight against the San Jose Sharks, and then we'll talk briefly about the loss against the Colorado Avalanche, but most importantly today, we get to talk about all the great things Bob Murray has done for this organization and why you guys should love him, especially based off the moves he did today where he completely turned the franchise around.
God.
So without further ado, we got to get to Stephen and Eddie who have joined me on the show tonight because they are just full of excitement to talk about these trades and get you guys all caught up on today's news. What's going on, guys?
Just start the show like a complete asshat.
I love it so much.
What are you talking about?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, we'll
I have our king behind me, as you can see. And it's here to have a good time.
It's gonna be all right.
here
It's good to be
to
back.
have a good time.
It's good to be
Remember,
We won
Pat said
4-0
this.
in a game in
At
which we were very bad.
Remember, if you're listening to this around the 40 or 50 minute mark, that Pat said he's here to have a good time tonight.
Oh, we're having a great time tonight. I haven't been on the show in 3 weeks, minus a Patreon over the weekend. So before we dig into anything, thank you two for carrying the load. Honestly, you guys have really stepped up and taken over the show.
No.
So hats off.
You picked a good time to return.
It wasn't on purpose, but it turned out magically.
Well, like you did mention, the Ducks lost 4-1 to the Colorado Avalanche a couple games ago. I don't want to stick too much on that game, but Drysdale scored in that game, got a second goal of his NHL career. He had 5 points in 11 games, now has 5 points in 12 games after tonight, but just a great start to his young NHL career. And Troy Terry picked up an assist on that game and continued his trend of somehow looking exceptionally well against the Colorado Avalanche. Like, he just plays, I don't know, he just plays at a completely another level when he goes against the Colorado Avalanche. And I know he's from Denver and he played for Denver University, so there's something going for him there. But
Did he really?
he attempted, 4 or 5 toe drags in that game. And then obviously one of them was to set up Jamie Drysdale for the goal.
I had no idea he was from the Denver area.
Yeah, it's not like the Ducks
the
broadcast.
Ducks broadcast
right?
never mentions that.
Not at all.
When they brought him on, they kind of they had to have mentioned it. Our broadcast is the type of broadcast that would mention that every time they had a breath.
Yeah,
They do.
Hence the sarcasm. Sam Carrick also picked up an assist in that game and an assist tonight. He's got 4 points in 5 games since getting called back up to the Ducks. He's got a couple fights. There was rumors that Nick Deslauriers was going to be on the move to Pittsburgh and never materialized. But even without him going, you look at some of the expiring contracts at the end of this season, Sam Carrick looks to maybe have established himself as a pretty decent fourth liner for the Ducks going forward. Like, he's not young, he's 29, but a pretty good stretch if you're looking to stick around the lineup if you're Sam Carrick.
Yeah, there's no reason he shouldn't be, right up there when camp breaks next year. Like, there's no reason he shouldn't finish out the season up here. I don't really think there's anybody we're expecting to come back super healthy to make a huge difference. Like, Raquel comes back, maybe Zegras slides back in, but beyond that, it's not much.
Are we really going to see Zegras the rest of this season?
I think we'll see him for 4 or 5 games at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dwindling down, right? What are we at the 10 game mark left?
Well, he can only play 9
12?
games. He can only play 9 more games for that accrued season to not take effect, and then he burns that extra year off UFA status. So if we see him at all, it'd be for the last 8 games of the season, and I'm sure they want to give him a few games in San Diego to kind of get used to playing center. So I think kind of Steven nailed it on the head there. Probably the last 4 or 5 games of the season, if we see him at all, is when he'll come back up. But I believe there was a comment from Murray or Akins, who said like the plan is that you should likely see him at some point here near the end of the season.
What
They
did,
have to. They're letting fans come back. Like,
Yeah.
you got to put the prospect in front of the fans. Like, really,
Yeah.
there's only 5 home games that they're going to play with people.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he said, right? He was like, you should expect to see him sooner rather than later. Like, so it's like an indeterminate thing, but it feels very near future. There's just enough games left in the season for him to go down, get his feet wet, come back up, play a few games in front of the fans. Honestly, especially when you do add in fans coming back into the building, it almost makes it worth it to be able to have him go down, get a couple of games in at center, and come back up and kind of make his almost like a fresh debut at center at the NHL level in front of fans. Maybe he can still kind of get that little bit of pop of playing in front of people, because it'll be a little bit special, at least since he's come back.
There's a lot of home games coming up, and it's against the Kings too, right? So that should be always fun. Not a difficult team.
It's an easy stretch of games for Trevor Zegras coming up.
What do you guys think about Stolar's game tonight?
I mean, he's a nice audition for the backup job in 2020, 2021. I think, pretty much every game he's come in this year, he's looked good. And this is obviously the best game of his career and his time with the Ducks. It's not something you're going to expect every game, but it feels nice to have somebody to look on to past Ryan Miller, right? We've relied on Ryan Miller for so long to be that guy who can come in as the backup and put in a shift and really, get the players behind him and push the Ducks towards a win. And Anthony Stolarz seems like he could be that guy. I know the Ducks kind of left him out to dry in a couple plays in this game. The Sharks hit 3 posts, so it's one of those shutouts where, he made some really great saves, but you get some luck behind it as well. So it's not...
There's no shutout that doesn't have a bit of luck, though.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think he did all the things that he needed to do, and he got the breaks that he needed to get. And that's the recipe for that kind of thing, I think, hell, you could say that was the theme for the whole night, which is like the Ducks did literally just enough. Like, whatever the bare minimum of things that they had to do, they did literally that much to score 4 goals. And then the rest of it was like, fuck it, this guy wants to play in the NHL. Let's just see what he can do in front of the Sharks team that we're not even going to try to stop.
In that first 12 minutes, though, where the 3 goals were scored, and on those plays, I felt like San Jose was just super lazy on a lot of those plays, and it just looked like they were just puck watching for a couple of those goals. And then Volkov's second goal, I swore it was a Sam Steele goal. I didn't even know he touched the puck. I'm like, did he smack Hurdle's stick into the puck? Is that why it scored? But I went back, watched the replay, and it was tipped. But yeah, I agree. Stolarz was amazing tonight. Raquel with a snipe. Hakanpaa, what the hell, man? What a nice tip. And, the broadcast, I thought, did a pretty good job tonight, which I rarely compliment them. But zeroing in on all his goals that he had, or 9 of his goals.
Yeah, that was a nice package that they put together.
I was like,
that
damn.
was really cool.
Pretty noticeable when you do that. This guy's got like a taste for the front of the net like that. We talk about Max Jones doing that, but obviously Hakanpaa, not just a sniper, he's pretty good around the crease.
He's one of those guys that finds himself in the right position. Like right when that goal was scored, I remembered a play from a few games ago where Jamie Drysdale set him up on a similar play where he just fired a strike of a pass to the back post and Hakanpaa was just waiting there with his stick on the ice. And then you look at the highlight package they put together and you find out, he's been doing that a lot this year. And he's got a great shot and he can score goals in different ways, but he's just that guy who always seems to find himself in the right space at the right time, which is exactly the type of player you need when you're going to have, you have passers like Ryan Getzlaf in the team, and you're eventually going to have, a player like Trevor Zegras in your lineup on a nightly basis. He's kind of the exact guy you would want to have with an elite playmaker like Zegras, where he can get into those spots, and no matter where he is on the ice, Trevor Zegras is going to find him.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is I think that the style that his game is, where he is kind of a physical power forward, crash the net type, is you don't think of what he's doing as being cerebral, but it is. It's really smart. What he does is he finds soft areas. He knows where all the little slips and cracks in defenses are. He knows, kind of how to position himself to create screens or to create opportunities. That's that kind of like heat map around the crease, it paints a pretty clear picture, I think, of somebody who understands how to leverage their ability to be an effective goal scorer. And I think that is a type of, hockey IQ that because he's scoring goals, we just go, oh, he's a good finisher, instead of just kind of appreciating the fact that he's actually just being really smart.
Yeah, he creates a lot of space, right?
Yeah.
He gets into those soft areas, as they say all the time. But he does, and that package, I think, kind of really highlighted his game pretty effectively. But other than that, this game was pretty brutal. The Ducks were effectively just getting trucked, like from the second period on. I think they were outshot, was it 18-3 or something like that, or maybe 19-3 in the second period. I don't remember the final total of the second period. It was rough. That was a rough go, but they pulled it off, right? And a lot of that, though, to me, was Stolarz. But do you guys want to get to anything interesting that happened tonight or today that maybe wasn't the game?
Yeah,
because
everybody's here for the trade deadline talk, which for
God.
good reason and bad reason, because the Ducks made two moves, but
So-
they weren't the moves we were
Did they?
expecting.
Real quick, okay, so let's do the whole, paint the whole picture, right? So for the last 10 days, we've heard pretty consistently the Ducks are taking calls on Manson and they're taking calls on Raquel, and that they want a first and a prospect for both of them. That is their asking price. Then we see Savard get traded, we see Felino get traded, we see a couple of other guys get traded. Last night, it comes out that Nick Delorier is being traded to Pittsburgh. Then that gets backtracked. But now it's out there that they could be looking to offload Nick Delorier. Pittsburgh is interested. Brian Burke, truculence, all that shit happens. And, maybe it seems like from an Anaheim perspective that it might not, that maybe a little bit of more weirder things than we might have thought of is going to be in play here. Come to today, nothing all day. Absolute silence. Get to the end of the day, they announced two trades. Ben Hutton to Toronto for a 2022 fifth, and Jani Hakanpaa and a sixth-round pick for Haydn Fleury to Carolina. Cut to now Pat is pissed.
That's the understatement of the year. That Pat is pissed. But yeah, those were the two deals for today. And I mean, I'll let Pat explain himself. We've been going back and forth in Twitter and Discord all day. So I'll let Pat, you kind of take the wheels here and explain your rage to everybody that's listening right now.
Falcon.
Well, I have a really difficult time supporting. I guess you could say not just Bob Murray, but the organizational's outlook as to how they handle their roster and handle their players and their prospects, picks, whatever you want to call it, the whole thing, the assets, right? I've defended Bob Murray, even though I've kind of teased about him a bunch, especially about Bobby's breakfast, the season ticket holder stuff. It's all cheek, tongue in cheek and just being funny. But I really have defended the guy. It takes a lot to be successful in this league for a long time, and he was for 4 or 5 years. This team was ultra competitive. Yeah, we lost in Game 7s, and those were not fun. But to be there all the time and be at, the cusp of getting over the hump and winning takes a lot. And then you always have a downturn. Totally understandable. I get going through a rebuild. This dude refuses to admit that this is a rebuild. This dude refuses to make moves like this is a rebuild. He literally, in my opinion, is just making trades that are moving out mediocrity and moving in mediocrity. I don't see a way. If you don't trade a veteran to bring in younger players or assets to get younger players, you're missing the mark time and time again. And we've talked about this so many times on this show. So it blows me away that people are like, it's not that bad. I'll wait till the offseason. Dude, we've been waiting for that for years at this point. Everyone says, rebuilds 3 to 5 years or whatever. Sure, they can be, but this guy's signing people to contracts, Jakob Silfverberg, Adam Henrique, trading for guys and then moving them out, but they're not. It's not like it's bringing anything into this team that is giving us an influx of the next generation of player. People get all excited about assets, and I think that it's probably with every team in the NHL. Overvalue prospects, overvalue as a fan. You're like, oh, I love that guy, I love this guy, but we don't really have anybody outside of Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale that stand out on this team, and those guys were extremely high picks. You look at the guys we talk about here. I like Max Jones and I like Sam Steele. I used to, but like I feel like all those guys, including Troy Terry, they all kind of fit in that middle. Comtois been nice, but like, what is he doing other than just bringing in guys who are like middling players on any team? What has he done? Everyone's like, oh, wait till the offseason when the expansion draft comes. Oh, cool. So that way, Raquel loses that extra season off his contract. That's great. What is Bobby doing?
So is this I don't know what he's doing. Is this a failed deadline then because he didn't move them?
It's a failed deadline because he has imposed to basically everybody that this is not a rebuild. We're here to win. We expect to win. That's what we're doing here. Has he not seen the roster that he's been fielding all year with Dallas Eakins? Really? Like, his roster choices are terrible. And you know that he has a say in that kind of stuff along with Eakins. It's a complete failed trade deadline. It's garbage. Like, okay, fine. Haydn Fleury could be good. Maybe. We don't know. He's not like this. He wasn't like heavily sought after. He didn't even move veterans, right? He moved Jani, Hakanpaa, and Ben Hutton, who was basically like an injured reserve. I'm gonna tag him in because someone's hurt.
Technically, but
fine.
Those guys were both at the end of their 20s, which is exactly the age of guys you want moving out.
Like, he didn't bring anything that moves the needle at all for me that's going to speed anything up.
They were both unrestricted free agents too.
I would not have been upset if Getzlaf got traded. Would not have been upset about it because he literally was doing it like he's going to fall on his sword for his team.
Yeah.
If they could bring back assets, I'm down to do it. Everyone's freaking out. What if he goes to Vegas? Who gives a shit?
Well, we're gonna get to Getzlaf later because I don't. That's a whole other topic I want to talk about. But like
the trade deadline in a whole, sorry, to me was an F. It's just garbage to me. This whole thing is garbage. We're gonna sit through this for next year when he's still GM.
See, my problem with that is like I get where you're coming from, and I've been hard on Murray for the last couple seasons where he hasn't traded guys when he should have, and Silfverberg and Henrique are the top of my list before they got contracts, unrestricted free agents. They probably should have been traded at the deadlines where they were in the last year of their contract and would have been rentals for other teams. He didn't do that, and now we're stuck with two contracts that are clearly very difficult to move, and Adam Henrique is kind of exhibit A there, passing through waivers unclaimed this year. Yeah, despite now producing at a better level recently, he's still a very hard contract to move at his age and the term and the amount that he makes. But the big thing for me today is both deals. Ben Hutton for a fifth. That's a W as small as it is because he was a player you signed as a PTO at the beginning of the season. You got a 5th round pick for a guy that was an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season anyway and really wasn't doing much for your team. And then the Haydn Fleury trade, again, like you said, it doesn't move the needle, but Jani Hakanpaa was an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. He's not a guy that's likely going to be a long-term player on this team. You add a 6th round pick to that, which you've offset in the deal for Ben Hutton because you got a 5th. And you bring in a 24-year-old former 7th overall defenseman who has played only 13 minutes a night over the last couple seasons. And the one season where he played more than 13 minutes a night, analytically speaking, he looked excellent. And like he was trending to be a play-driving, shut-down defenseman that he was projected to be out of the draft. That's a win to get a player like that in. And, maybe it pans out, maybe it doesn't, but you don't really lose anything at the end of the day. You lose Hakanpaa, who you would have lost at the end of the year in a 6th round pick.
Are you really thinking, because to me, Bob Murray is literally stepping over $20 bills to pick up dimes or to pick up a buck. Like, he literally, and then he had the balls to come out and say that nobody was offering a first for either of those guys. Like, are you insane? Do you really think that's the case, or is that saving face? I mean, we don't really know.
That's
I don't buy it, though. I don't buy it.
We don't know. And I'll pass it over to Stephen because I know he's got his opinions on this too. But the big thing for me with that is we don't know what the return was on any of these deals or what the offers were put in place. So it's fair to criticize him for not making moves, but it's not like these guys were unrestricted free agents. They have another year left. You can trade them at the draft. You can trade them next year as UFAs. And the price as a rental next year is going to be relatively similar to the price that you could have fetched for them this year, clearly because he wasn't getting what he wanted.
today was not the only day he could have traded him. Jesus Christ. Like, he's had a long time to make moves and make deals. Sorry, Steven, go ahead, please.
No. You guys are good.
No, I'll keep yammering. Go.
I think it's worth kind of appreciating that there's kind of a bunch of different things that we're all kind of talking about, right? There is the big picture total score, what Bob Murray's tenure has been, what it's become, where it's headed, right? Then there's the individual decisions that he's made. Then you have the semi-cumulative nature of those decisions as the roster that it is, with all the players and difficulties and deficiencies and all the things about it. And then you also kind of have the part of us that is still the fan, which is looking for hope. And I think for a lot of people, they looked at this deadline as a sign or as an opportunity to see things from the organization that reflected how they felt, right? Make some of these trades, get assets that are younger, that are closer to the window in which we can see ourselves becoming competitive again. Whereas, and I think that's totally fair, but I don't think the organization did that. And so the question becomes, were the prices not there? Were they asking for too much?
Well, the problem is that Bob Murray said one thing, that he's going to win now. His team is doing the complete opposite. He has all season to make deals with Wheel. He does nothing.
You're reaching,
real
though.
quick. We do burn Bob Murray a little bit for this. He did say, I want to be competing for a playoff spot. That's a win now thing, and I get it. But he didn't say this is a division winning team. What he expected is a team in the race. That's fine. I have no problem with him saying that publicly. It's about a lot of the decisions and things like that. I think we all know exactly the type of person Bob Murray is, and I think we all know that he's not going to be out here on some more fucking tanking shit. Even if he is doing his version of that, he's never going to say those things because he's just a fucking old school dude. Like, he's very professional and rigid and all this shit. You know, and so I think that's why we have to kind of read the tea leaves here with all the different moves. And so the Flurry trade is objectively a good trade. The Hutton trade is objectively a good trade. There last year, I think he made more good trades than bad trades. And I think both of those things can be true. And I still think that this is starting to get dicey moving forward.
Okay, objectively good trades. These are W's. On what scale are you looking at here? Like, where are these W's? Are there W's on the fact that it's a small time move to upgrade very slightly one asset to get another? These are not. It's nothing. These don't mean anything in the long run.
But that's not true, and I don't think it's fair to say that.
Okay.
Because every time a team wins the Stanley Cup, we spend 3 months in the offseason talking about all the minor players on that team and where they came from. This guy's a 3rd-round pick. That guy's a 5th-round pick. They got this guy at the deadline last year for nothing. Oh, that guy they got unsigned. And we spend all this time talking about how great all those little moves are and how much they added to the easy part, which is knowing what a star is, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't think we can fucking have it both ways where these moves don't matter in the long run, but then when the end goal comes, we say that they all mattered from backwards. So
I hear what you're getting at with that, right? Because you could look at dynasties where those things matter. I see what you're saying. Like, look at the Blackhawks, right? Like, who's playing 3rd line D? Oh, he's giving breaks to the guys who are out there all the time, right? I get what you're saying. Duncan Keith and he's able to play his game because there's guys that aren't necessarily stars that fill the gaps.
Nicholas Chalmers,
I get it.
They've got those depth guys who play good roles. The thing
we don't have anything here going forward.
Okay, so here's the thing. It is a perfectly legitimate thing to say there are multiple opportunities for him to have gotten high value and high potential young assets to improve the long-term future of this team. That's totally justifiable. The bitch of it is he has a small out here. They are not rental trades. He doesn't have to. He still has an opportunity to maximize their potential this summer or next trade deadline.
Not buying it.
You may not think he's going to do it, but it is a thing that he can do.
They're all
right?
another year older.
Not probable.
They all have more propensity to play more games to get injured. There's a lot of things going on that happen in cycles, right?
I'm not saying that it's
not. He doesn't
a
sell when people are at their peak worth, right? He's like, I'm gonna hold back and sit back and see what happens. He even says he doesn't like making big trades at the deadline. He's more of a draft.
Okay,
guy.
but there's evidence to show he tried today, because it's been put out there that the original deal with Carolina involved Josh Manson as the focal point of that deal, and it fell apart for whatever reason. Now, the thing that we can debate this for days, and we'll never know, is what was the details of that specific offer? What were the offers he got for Rickard Rakell? What did he inevitably turn down? And was it something that we would have all been mad at him trading Manson or Rakell for to begin with? And they're all hypothetical situations, because Pat, if it came out and it was Josh Manson and the Ducks were going to get a first round pick and Ryan Suzuki from Carolina, yeah, I'd be pissed, because you should be getting a first round pick. You should be getting a top prospect. But we won't know.
And if those are on the table, you have to take that deal. Yeah.
And if you were going to only get a second round pick for Josh Manson, we'd be sitting here right now saying, why the hell did he not wait and hold on to Josh Manson and get more for him at the draft or next season? And all you got is a second round pick for him. People would be going nuts.
People did that last year with Kasha, where it was, they had to take back as a salary to get a first, and they shouldn't have had to done that, and they sold low, and blah, blah, blah. It's poor asset management. We can be frustrated with decisions Bob Murray is making. We can be frustrated with the fact that it doesn't always feel like there's a plan. I have no problem with that, but we can't argue against ourselves with what we're looking for. And that's the one thing I just think we need to be a little bit careful of, because it's 100% true. If he would have traded Josh Manson for a third round pick and a conditional fourth or some bullshit like that, everyone would have lost their shit. And it would have been, he sold low and blah, 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 ignoring the fact that he moved the contract out. He got rid of an older guy. He got in 2 draft picks. That's better than no draft picks, right? That's got to matter. So he has a little bit of a buffer because they're not UFAs this summer. The expansion draft complicates that. The realities of anything can happen between now and then complicates that. I'm not saying that there aren't risks involved with the decisions he's making, but what I am saying is that I don't think...
We were talking about a Rakell trade last year.
Yeah.
Let me say
it should have been done.
This is my problem. These things we're talking about, fine. We could get to the expansion draft. I get COVID plays a lot in this. I get, quarantine plays a lot in this. I understand, money, and they don't really know what the outlook is for the next season yet, right? They're not really sure what's going to be happening. So bringing on assets that cost more money, maybe not the best idea. It was harder to make trades. I get that. I get that there's a lot of unknowns that, we don't know exactly what was offered. Problem is this asshole has had several seasons to move out veteran players when they were underperforming, but people still liked them. And Rakell would have been money last year to trade.
Yeah.
Now he waits. Now he slams his head on the ice, misses a shit ton of games, comes back. Yeah, he scored tonight, but he's not lighting the world on fire, right? After he could have done it earlier. He's had time to make these moves. I don't think that this value that our players have, our veteran players, is going to go up come summer.
Pat,
I don't think it's going to all of a sudden skyrocket. And now we're going to get what we want. I don't see it happening.
Their value is objectively going to go down. But what they are is players who fit a type and are of a level of desirability, for lack of a better way to say it, that they are going to be attractive, and they are the type of players that we have traditionally seen leveraged for high-end prospects or first-round picks. The thing that he had this year was the opportunity, because it was 2 playoffs, to get both of those things. Remember the Kessler deal? They were going to get the 10 and the late. They were going to get the pick that ended up being Nick Ritchie. But Bob Murray took that off the table because he didn't get him at the deadline, and he didn't get to have him for that extra playoff run. So I think it is fair to say that from a big picture perspective, this is a very frustrating, disappointing, and not the most encouraging deadline as far as where the organization is headed philosophically. I don't think this deadline is fatal. There's nothing that did or didn't happen today that they can't pivot or recover from quickly moving forward. They
I agree, things can
trade.
change.
It's not going to be
the track record of this organization is not great.
Right, but that's my thing. If we want to criticize the big picture thing, that's fine. But nothing today is fatal, and that's what I am getting frustrated with. Is it's this thing like, it's officially we have set the events in motion to bring down the Rapture. Like it's fucking ridiculous.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's a
bringing
missed
down the Rapture,
opportunity.
It's
completely. Not going to argue that. But it's not
right?
fatal.
Like it's all added together. At least for me. And like I want to address Chris in chat. It's like 3 seasons is not several. It's been 4 seasons, man. Getting swept by San Jose blows. Like that season was not great. Not a great season. Buyout Corey Perry. There was a lot that goes on these last few years. I don't even want to talk. I don't want to say Theodore because that's a whole other.
It's a unique situation
in it. Other thing that happens
in its own.
Yeah, I want to see what happens here. I've just lost like faith in the direction of the organization. I've been a pretty big supporter. I'm not going to stop being a fan. I'm not going to stop going to games or watching games or any of that stuff. But like next year's not going to be good either. Sorry, it's not. So we're at 4. So is this team competitive in 3 more years?
Like Pat, I can agree with being mad that they hadn't done something already. Like Rickard Rakell should have been traded already. Josh Manson probably should have been traded already, just like Silfverberg and Henrique should have, to signal a rebuild sooner rather than later. I can agree with that 100%. I would say though, Rakell and Manson not getting moved today does not mean this deadline is a failure because of all the factors that went into this deadline and the fact they're not unrestricted free agents at the end of the season. It's more of a failure, I think, that he wasn't
sitting around today
year.
waiting for something big to happen, and you were severely disappointed.
Yeah, I'll say, I was just disappointed that nothing big happened today. But I can sit there.
I thought I was alone here. I'm like, you guys are insane. Are you serious?
No, I'm definitely disappointed. But if the offers weren't there, then I'm not. And I hate this argument because I have to address it here. I saw it a couple people saying in the chat. Oh well, David Savard got a first and a third, and Nick Felino got a first. Honestly, this is the only deadline I can sit here and say rental players were probably more desirable for those teams this year than guys like Rickard Rakell and Josh Manson were, because David Savard doesn't have to get protected at the expansion draft. They don't have to worry about having his cap hit on the books for another season past this one. They had to get it retained twice to even make it work for Tampa Bay for this year with the flat cap. It just made sense for Tampa Bay to bring that guy in on a 1-year deal, or like for the rest of this season for a playoff push to try and win a Stanley Cup. The Leafs bring in Nick Felino because he's a good fit for their organization. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. He's likely going to go back to Columbus. They had to reduce his salary twice again to get that under the books. There's no way they could have made that work for next season, and they only pay him about $1.25 million because that's all they could afford to get done. The list of teams that were willing to bring in Rickard Rakell and Josh Manson, with that second year on, they have to protect them in the expansion draft. Otherwise, you're paying more for them to be essentially a rental because they're going to go to Seattle to begin with. And then the amount of teams that could fit them under the cap next year as well, with the cap potentially not even going up next year. And then with Manson's case, the 10 teams that he has said he doesn't want to go to. You have to work that into it. Winnipeg was clearly one of those teams. I think if Winnipeg was a team he said he'd go to, he'd be in Winnipeg right now. The Jets didn't do anything at the deadline. They needed a defenseman. I think they got one. It was a depth defenseman. I can't even remember who it was. I think it was Jordy Ben, who they brought in for basically nothing. Honestly, if Manson had waived his no-move clause and would go to Winnipeg, I think he'd be a Winnipeg Jet after today, because I think the Jets were willing to move their first-round pick and potentially a prospect to get it done, and it just didn't materialize for them. So again, I'm going all over the place here, but the David Savard thing and the Nick Felino thing and the Anthony Mann thing, comparing all these deals and saying, well, this team paid this for that, doesn't mean that was the market for the Ducks. And you look at Bob Murray come out at the end of the day and say nobody was offering first-round picks, and we didn't really want any picks outside the first round, which I can actually kind of get behind. I would rather a prospect in the age of 20 to 24 than a second-round pick at this point in the stage of the Ducks rebuild with how much the young players are developing. I can't be mad at that, because if the offers weren't there, and it's something we'll never know, I was not willing to come out of today and undersell Josh Manson and Rickard Rakell when you don't have to, because they have another year on their deal where you can trade them without the expansion draft in the way. You can move them at the draft. You can move them at the deadline next year. Do I have full faith he's going to do that? No. But that's a whole other question. I can be mad at him for not trading Rickard Rakell and Josh Manson down the road, but I'm not going to sit here and say I'm mad at him for not selling low on these guys right now.
Yeah.
You guys are right on that. Both of you guys are 100% right on that take. Not denying that. The problem for me here lies that he didn't trade them prior to this year, and he didn't trade them again this year because he felt this team was going to be competitive. That's the only reason, which is insane to me. This team is not good. It hasn't been good.
Yeah. Now,
he should have gotten rid of them before this. So my biggest issue with that, though, is he waits all the way until the deadline today to do jack shit. He does jack shit. And everyone's on the chopping block. I'm gonna scratch veterans. I'm angry now, dude. Too little, too late, man. If you waited all this time, you better have something to show for. So, like, his last chance to make any sort of impression other than what he showed this franchise and his fan base, rather, is the draft. If he flubs that, like,
yeah,
that is seriously going to be damaging. I feel like not forever, but longer than people think it's going to be.
Yeah.
You retain these assets that are veteran and aging and not producing, go pull up Manson's stats. Go pull up Rickard Rakell's stats. They all suck, right? Because the team sucks. So you want to move players that maybe need to go somewhere else and have a better chance to be successful. He hasn't done it with anybody.
I'm fully prepared to get mad at him at the draft or next deadline if he doesn't trade these guys and then potentially re-signs them to contract extensions. I'm fully prepared to get mad at him for that because I know there's a possibility that that's what happens because of his track record. 100% I can get behind that. The reason
Chris, why did he not trade them? Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to hear what Chris said.
No worries.
He's always against me.
Like the reason I said you were reaching earlier in the podcast is because it was at the beginning of the season he said they were a win-now team. It was ridiculous to say that at the beginning of the season, but all of his comments recently have been saying, okay, we're going to take offers on some of these guys, and we're looking for first-round picks, and we're looking for younger prospects to put into this system. I don't think it means he's fully changed his philosophy and now he's embracing a rebuild by any means, but you can't take something he said before the season started and apply it to this deadline and be like, yeah, this is why he didn't do it, because he still thinks at this point on April 12th that the Ducks are a playoff team. I don't think there's no way he doesn't believe that. And you look at the comments right now, he doesn't believe the Ducks right now are a playoff team. And that's not why.
Tune changed midway through this year when he was like, "Oh, Minnesota's not going to die when we play them."
He was stupid for believing that in the first place. But you can't sit here and say he didn't move Rakell and Manson at the deadline because he thinks the Ducks are a playoff team. I just honestly think the offers weren't there because I don't think it was a lack of trying. And we can get into this deal now because we talked about it before. But like Ryan Getzlaf attempted to trade him today. I don't think you do that if you think you're a playoff team. You don't move your captain. You're trying to get some assets for Ryan Getzlaf. He tried to move Josh Manson. There's a legitimate report out there from Nick Alberga, I think I'm getting his name right, that Josh Manson was part of the original deal with Carolina and it fell apart. And that's likely because Carolina was not willing to meet the asking price, which was probably a first-round pick plus a prospect. And it devolved into Haydn Fleury for Hakanpaa in the sixth, because Hakanpaa was a significantly lesser version of what Josh Manson was and what the Carolina Hurricanes were looking for. So there was at least evidence this year that he was trying. And Rakell's name was out there for a reason because there was a ton of teams calling and he was listening. And as we've seen several people report, the price was high and it was a first-round pick plus a prospect. And I don't think anybody was willing to pay that, or many teams were in a position to work a deal out that included Rickard Rakell being a part of that team next year. I don't think there's many teams who could just make that work with the players they have to protect in the expansion draft with the salary cap issues. And I think a lot of those things clear up at the draft and into next season and the deadline. But then you run the risk, like you said, of do they get injured? And does the value go down if they are a year older and the production still tails off next year because the Ducks aren't a good team? But you just have to weigh the odds there. Would you rather take a second-round pick for him now or a third-round pick in a no-name prospect and take the risk that you get something more or something less next year? I'd rather take the risk because I still think the value is not going to be significantly lower next year as a rental or at the draft than it is right now. And you can still get a first round pick. You see a deadline day every single year. The players who get first round picks, I can sit here with confidence and say, even if Ricardo Rakell produces at the same level he is this year and Josh Manson is the same player as he is this year, next year, they can get first round picks at the deadline. They will be near the top of teams' wish lists for a right shot defenseman or a top 6 contributor offensively among the other players who will be rentals next year. And you'll get a first round pick for both of those guys. So
what does that do though effectively, right? You wait again.
Yeah, you wait again, and you don't get a pick.
Again.
Now, would I rather have a first round pick in 2022 or 2021 than 2022? Yes, because that guy essentially gets here a year sooner, potentially, depending on their development, than a guy in 2022. I also don't like this argument that 2022 or 2021 is a weak draft, so I'd rather have a 2022 pick. You just are devaluing the draft before you even get to it and see the results of it.
But you also don't have to use those picks to make picks. You could use those picks to move up. You could use those picks in a trade. Like those assets don't have to be guys you draft.
Yeah.
That's the part of it too that I like.
I mean, I could get into what I think the value of draft picks are outside of the first 20 and how, a 25th pick is the same as a 45th pick, and it doesn't really matter unless you're moving into the top 20. But that's a whole nother discussion for another show. But yeah, I mean, if you like the Blue Jackets this year, the 2 picks they got are likely going to be late first. They got a first from the Leafs and a first from the Lightning. Those are 2 teams that could meet in the conference final, and those are going to be
those should be at least 28, 29.
Yeah, they're going to be very late picks. And then it's only really valuable at that point if you package maybe those up and move into the top 20 if you can. But these are all hypothetical situations. Like, yeah, if the Ducks picked up another first round pick, great. But I think they could have this year. I just don't think the offers were there. I just don't think somebody was willing to give a first round pick plus for Ricardo Rakell and Josh Manson at this deadline. That's the only reason I don't think it's a failure. I think as a whole, Bob Murray's decisions over the last couple of years and to not deal Ricardo Rakell and Josh Manson sooner is a failure. I just don't think this deadline specifically and not moving them at this deadline is a failure if the offers just weren't there. And
the only saving grace of this deadline was that they didn't trade D'Lo. That's for me.
Yeah, I still wish I knew more behind that because I don't know where Elliot Friedman got his source from that, but I'm sure he's not happy. He doesn't really choke too many deals, and let alone a 4th liner to the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Kidding.
But it's Brian Burke. Brian Burke gets his deals done. He likes his players. He brings in Jeff Carter. I'm sure Nick Deslauriers was a guy they were interested in. Clearly, the discussions went to a certain point where they were almost over the line. I'm wondering if Bob Murray honestly just pulled out of that deal because it got leaked before they wanted it to happen, and maybe the return was like a 6th round pick or a 5th round pick or something. But I would have taken anything for Nick Deslauriers because whatever you get in return, I think, is a net positive at that point.
Well, had Haydn Fleury signed for one more year after this?
Yeah, one more year. He turns 25
someone asked
in July.
chat, so.
Okay. Yeah, I was just looking it up right now. He turns 25 in July. He's got another year at 1.3. So I think it's worth pointing out GMs are inherently risk averse. When you make a decision that is bold or risky, it's easier to get that, have it look worse and bounce back on you, and you're more likely to get fired, right? It's like when you go for it on 4th down, if it fails, you look like an idiot because you should have just punted it or whatever, like that kind of crap. So I think this year there is a bunch of factors that add extra excuses built in for GMs not to do anything. And so I do think that Eddie's right, that like I do think actually the reason that the picks that got made for first got made is because either it was someone they were definitively going to be protecting in Mantha, who is signed for like 4 more years after this or something crazy, or it's they were trading for guys that they weren't going to have to worry about once the summer comes around, and they were almost paying not to have to protect them. So, I think it's stupid. I think you should still, Anaheim still should have made deals. I think they should have been aggressive. They should have looked into taking back money. I think they should have been aggressive and engaged and trying to be creative, trying to pick up third, fourth, and fifth round picks by taking on money or things like that, like seeing what little things that they can do. I'm definitely disappointed with how this day went. I think they had a real opportunity to give a serious kick in the ass to the rebuild. I definitely think it's a missed opportunity, but I do think there is a degree to which it is being made out as a complete and total failure, and I feel like that's an unfair mischaracterization that I think is more reflective of everybody's emotion and where we're at with the situation, and less reflective of where the roster is actually at. Because if they were going to be UFAs, then you take whatever you can get, right? That's why
you take the best offer at that point,
right? That's why you embarrass yourself and take a second for Taylor Hall, right? Because you weren't going to get it anyways.
Yeah, and he had complete control of that situation because they were dumb enough to give him a no-move clause on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, exactly.
I could not believe that trade, and then I also couldn't believe the hatred for Taylor Hall on Twitter. But how he sucks and has to hide behind other players, and it's like...
The thing I hate again is we already mentioned it in comparing Rickard and Krell and Manson potential deals to Savard and Felino and other guys. Everybody's comparing the fact that Florida gave up Heineman, who's a second-round pick of their own, and a second-round pick for Sam Bennett, and be like, oh, Calgary got more for Sam Bennett than the Sabres got for Taylor Hall. Well, yeah.
Sam Bennett.
Taylor Hall carried an $8 million contract and had a no-move clause and basically said, I'm going to Boston, and that's it. Because the Leafs weren't going to... There was teams who were interested. I think that it was reported the Islanders had a deal in place for Hall and decided to go for Palmieri and Zajac because they fit the system better. I think the list of teams legitimately interested in Taylor Hall was 3 or 4. And at the end of the day, he could just choose.
That's what I was going to say. I think the teams he was legitimately interested in was 3 or 4. I think everybody, if they thought they'd have had a chance of it, because you got to figure it was Toronto, Boston, Colorado.
The Islanders were in there, and probably Florida. Oh. I would say 5.
You think he might be willing to go to Florida?
I think they moved out cap space for a reason, and at the end of the day, all they added was Montour and Bennett. Oh, no.
I'm talking about him. Because I think more teams would have been involved if you can add him regardless. What I'm saying is like you said, because he has all that kind of control, I do think it reduced the number of people who were even involved to start with, because there were certain teams who were like, oh yeah, he's not going to waive it to come here. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know there were quotes that came out from him today, and also quotes from Kevin Adams, the Sabres GM, where it basically felt like Taylor Hall held them hostage and was saying, I want to go to Boston. That's where I want to go. And there was an interview I think he did with TSN where he basically said, I've been trying to go to Boston for the last couple seasons. And it just hasn't worked out. And now he's finally there, and guy's finally on an actual good team and is not going to be relied upon to be the guy, right? He's got 3 or 4 better players in front of him in Boston, where everywhere he's gone, he's kind of been, the 1 or 2 guy in that organization. So, but my point with
Taylor Hall for Conn Smythe, let's go.
Yeah, my point with all that was comparing that deal to the Sam Bennett deal. On the surface is the problem I have with everybody comparing certain deals to certain deals, because there's so many other things that went into it. All the nuances behind the Taylor Hall deal changed what the Sabres could get in return, because at the end of the day, they had one team saying, we're the only ones left interested in Taylor Hall. This is what we're going to give you. Take it or leave it. And they had to take it. And they got a second in Bjork from the Sabres. Meanwhile, I'm sure there was a number of suitors interested in Sam Bennett. The Florida Panthers were kind of put in the situation where they had to do something. They needed to react to what every other team in their division and across the Eastern Conference was doing. And they overpay a little bit for Sam Bennett. But the deals themselves really can't be compared and say, oh, well, the Flames got more for Bennett than the Sabres did for Hall, and that means the Sabres are stupid. Their organization sucks. It's like at the end of the day, if you have one offer and a UF, that part's true for a number of reasons. Well, except for the Mantha deal that came in at the end of the day, that was a
it seemed pretty boring.
Shout out to Yzerman, saving everybody from the boring ass GMs.
And also helping out the Lightning too. He takes some salary on that David Savard deal to get it through and help his old team.
So, can we talk about Getzlaf?
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that. I know we already kind of talked about it, but like, would you guys have been pissed he went to Vegas?
Like slightly, because I wouldn't have wanted to have to root for Vegas in the playoffs. But if it meant you got Peyton Krebs or a first round pick or Cody Glass or something in return for Getzlaf going to Vegas for 3 months to try and win a cup and then come back in free agency, then that's a no-brainer. Like I'll take the pain of having to watch him skate around in a gold bucket for 20 games at the end of the year and come back to Anaheim after that. And as Getzlaf said, I mean he's a true leader and a true captain and a guy who truly cares about this organization. When you look at his
would you guys have bought a Vegas jersey with Getzlaf on the back?
No, that's too far.
No.
That's way too far.
I wouldn't have done it because they don't look good. Like, fuck, I don't give a shit.
Oh, those great jerseys. That's a great helmet. Would look great with Getzlaf on the back of it.
So my thing with that was, I would have been bummed if he would have left, but I wouldn't blame him, and I think it would be great for the franchise in so much as, we came to an amicable agreement, and he wanted to go take another run at it, and we were going to see what we can get. Finding out, though, that he pretty much only was willing to do it to get a premium asset for Anaheim, and then when that didn't materialize, he was like, oh, well, then fuck it, it's not worth it. Like, genuinely makes me love him more.
Yeah.
Like, I really do think that it cannot be overstated how dope it is that he was like, yo, if we can like get some, like I know in my heart Bob Murray was like, I will trade you for Peyton Krebs. I will take any stupid dumb salary you need me to take. I want Peyton Krebs. And they were like, nope, and hung up.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine.
What I love about it though is like he could have come to Bob Murray and said, I want out because I want to win a cup. But he was asked to waive his no move clause. He waived it strictly to say, hey, if you can get something for me that's going to help this organization in the future, I'll go. Like, I'll leave. I don't even care about it. Like, I think if Vegas was a bad team, he still would have gone there. Like, yeah, they're a great team, one of the best teams in the NHL. I don't think that had anything to do with the fact that he was willing to go there. He was willing to go there because Vegas is close to his hometown.
That's
and
exactly
I don't
right,
think the Sharks.
If you really,
yeah.
Oh, go. Sorry.
No. I think the Sharks and the Kings might have been in that discussion if they were teams that were actually going to be interested in him. The only reason Vegas is interested in him is because they have a legitimate use for him as a playoff bound team. The rest of the teams in this area, maybe outside of Colorado, which could be too far for him, are not teams that are going to be competing for a Stanley Cup this year. So Vegas just really became the only option. You don't have a ton of leverage there at the end of the day to be like, hey, give us Peyton Krebs for Ryan Getzlaf if they're the only team that he's willing to go to and is legitimately interested in bringing him in. But like Steven said, it just speaks to Ryan Getzlaf's character so much and how much he cares about this organization that he wasn't leaving to seek a Stanley Cup. Like, he could care less. He just said, hey, if you can get something good that's going to help this organization, I'll go for 3 months, I'll play for another team, and I'll come back.
So here, real quick, I want to talk about what DB just said. He said they shouldn't have asked him to waive his no move if they didn't have a deal in place. Here's the thing that I think is important. Based on the information we have, Montreal called Anaheim earlier in the week specifically to inquire about him. I 100% know that because they have Perry, they thought that Ryan Getzlaf would be more inclined to come there because those two are incredibly close. And so I don't think that's what happened. I would imagine that what happened is Bob Murray got some phone calls. He probably told the guy on the other phone, like, look, I don't think he's going to want to do it, but I'll run it by him or whatever. He called Getsy and he was like, hey, this is a thing that's going on. People are asking about you. I've always said, we've kind of always agreed that it was going to be up to you and we'll figure it out from there. If this is something you're interested in, great. If not, whatever. And I'm sure he kind of sat there and thought about it. He was like, well, fuck, I can afford a flight to Vegas that, my family, which probably already got the fucking vaccine, like, I can put them on a flight. It's an hour to Vegas. They can come see me or whatever. No big deal. Drive in a car 3 hours, whatever it is. And so he was like, well, fuck it. I'll go to Vegas. They're a good team. That might be fun. See if I can get a cup on on an expansion team or whatever. That'd be weird. And then they couldn't make it happen. And Bob Murray and Getzlaf decided that it wasn't worth it. I think if he really wanted to go chase somewhere, he'd be in Montreal. And I think if they were really trying to get rid of him, it would have come out very differently, and the story and the conversation about it would be very different. I really do believe that this was a genuinely just amiable thing. Like, I really do just think Bob Murray just hit him up. It's like, hey, this is what's going on. And he was like, not really. And then he was like, oh, fuck it, Vegas ain't that bad. And they were like, they're not going to give us anything. Fuck it. Like, I really do just think it's that simple. I don't think that there was anything disrespectful by anybody in this.
No, I for sure wouldn't go that way.
I don't think they asked him. Like, I don't think they came to him and specifically said, would you, like, waive your no-move clause? I think it was like you said, Stephen. They said, hey, this team's interested, this team's interested, this team's interested. Would you go to any one of these teams?
Right.
And he sat back and thought about it and said, I'd go to Vegas. And then he waived his no-move clause to go to Vegas. It wasn't like, hey, we're trading you. Will you waive your no-move clause? I think it was like a conversation he had and saying, hey, man, like, you...
I would love to know what that deal could have been from Vegas, though, because, he's a UFA anyway. So...
It's probably Ryan Reeves.
Are you in that boat of people who are saying,
no,
I'll take... Well, Ryan Reeves is on the LTIR, apparently, so... maybe it could have been just to get that contract out.
Yeah,
but
he makes like 1.7. I 100% bet you it would have been Ryan Getzlaf 50% retained, traded to somewhere, then 50% retained again for Ryan Getzlaf, traded to Vegas. Vegas would probably move Ryan Reeves out or Carrier or someone fucking like that, one of those dumb bottom six contracts that they have. And they would have just called it a day. I mean, hell, they could have moved one of their, defensemen or whatever too. But that's probably just what it would have been. It would have just been a roster swap, and then I think Anaheim would have been hoping for a conditional second. Maybe would have been as low as they were going to go on pick, or a high end prospect.
Pat, you can't tell me you're a part of the group that's is going to say we should have got whatever we could have for Ryan Getzlaf, because I've seen a lot of that on Twitter that was like, if they any asset's a good asset because Josh Manson was a 5th or 6th round pick and Troy Terry was a 5th round pick, so that should have got whatever you could have.
I just wonder what it was, right? Like, if it was like, we'll give you a 5th round pick for Getzlaf, which it wasn't. But I wonder what they were waiting for. Like, that's a thing I would really wonder what it was going to be.
Yeah, I would love to know what that threshold was. Like,
I would bet you it was a 3rd. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if Vegas was like, I'll give you a 3rd, maybe make it to a 2nd if we add like conditions. And I'm sure Bob was like, I'm starting at a 2nd.
Yeah. Because
my guy is going to have to leave and go do this whole thing. And you know what I mean? Like, it would have been a little bit of a production for Getzlaf.
I think it would be much higher, honestly. I think it would have been at least a 2nd, with that 2nd conditionally potentially turning into a 1st, if not a Glass or a Krebs. Like, I think if it was a 3rd, Vegas would have paid it, and he would be gone. I think if that was...
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying Vegas offered a 3rd, and I'm saying Bob Murray wasn't taking that.
Okay. Yeah, no way he's going to do that. Bobby was only in it for high picks. Maybe the saddest thing that I found out on Twitter today, besides Bob Murray not doing jack shit, was Tampa's Lindholm's done for the year, and I have tickets to 2 of the games, and it's going to bum me out. Not get to see my boy play. Broken wrist. He's done. It's very sad.
Yeah.
But that actually bothered me more than the trade deadline. It was a bummer. Not really, just kidding. Fuck Bob Murray. What do you guys want to get to next?
I
was going to ask you to grade the trade deadline. How do you guys feel about Bobby's trade deadline today?
C+. It
was good, but there's just nothing great. Like,
was it good?
But we're gonna run in circles on this argument. Like, the trades were not bad. You got a 5th for a guy you signed to a PTO, and you got a young potential to break out defenseman for nothing.
They're not bad deals when you look at them in a vacuum. As a whole, this deadline was like a D- or a D. There's no way it's almost a B.
The deadline
He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything.
But the D minus is that you're giving it isn't because of today. It's because of everything before today.
It's a D.
You're giving the context to D minus, and I don't disagree, right?
I don't.
But like he got a pick for nothing, and then he turned a 28, 29-year-old sixth defenseman into a potential top 4, 22-minute a night guy. That's a great fucking trade. That's a great fucking trade.
See.
Even if it doesn't come good, objectively value-wise, that's great.
It's a D.
The problem is he should have done more. And he
For a
didn't.
team that's dead last in the West, you would think there'd be a little more urgency here. There's just not.
We're running in circles on a lot of these topics. It's just it's one of those years where, you didn't have to be forced into a deal. If we sit down here next year and it's the same conversation, and Rickard and Raquel and Josh Manson as UFAs or as pending UFAs are a part of the Ducks organization still, then I'll sit there and say, okay, I can understand where you're coming from. I'm mad. These are a situation where you should have taken the best offer you could have got for them and just moved on and said, okay, see you later. And if that happens to be a second or a third or, a B-level prospect, it is what it is. And then we can sit here and harp on hypotheticals on why didn't you trade him last deadline? Why didn't you trade him at the draft? But, it's such a tough thing to judge because it all comes down to we don't know what offers they received. And I'm on the fence because if it was a first and they turned it down, I'd be upset. If it was a second and they turned it down, I'm fine with that because I wouldn't have wanted to sell low on him. So it's so hard to kind of pick your side of the fence, at least from me, because I don't know what those offers were. There's at least in my opinion, there's certain a level of where I would say, okay, I'd accept everything above this, and I would be okay with them not accepting everything below that. Without knowing where they are on that scale, it's hard for me to say, oh, it was, it's a big failure that they didn't trade these guys when they still have another year to do so.
See,
that's and I think that's kind of exactly what I've been trying to kind of get at tonight, and I don't know how good I've done.
you guys make a lot of sense. I just think more or less I just feel like it's just been a failure as a whole for a while.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I don't want it to seem like, I don't want to speak for Eddy, but I'm sure he feels similarly. Like, I am not trying to go out of my way to defend Bob Murray and his decision-making. I am trying to look at the individual moves, the opportunity cost of making or not making those trades, and go from there, right? I think the arrow is trending down, or any trending up that it is doing is entirely based on how good Jamie Drysdale and Trevor Zegras look. But I think it is important that they look to, start to kind of maximize, or I'm sorry, I got caught up. I think it's important that they look to transition the leadership of the organization. I think it's absolutely time. I don't think that's unfair to say.
We've been begging for it, man.
Yeah, but I think you can say that and also say today wasn't fatal in the same breath, and I don't think it's hypocritical or talking, out of both sides of your mouth.
No, you guys hit the nail on the head with it. I don't think it's fatal, but Chris, I'll be at the game the 24th and the 1st. See you one of those days. I was in no way, shape, or form making it seem like, and if I did, I apologize, that today was like the end all be all. It's just another disappointment, and it's a bigger disappointment. And I'll be even more angry come draft time.
Yep.
So let's see what happens here. Do we have questions we want to get to before we wrap this up? Or
yeah, we had a few fan questions that trickled in through Twitter throughout the day. I wanted to get to a couple of them. One of them was from DB Lowry, and I think it was a good point reflected from today's game and on Jamie Drysdale. And I saw a few people mentioning this on Twitter. The question was, why is Aiken still playing Drysdale on his offside, even with Hakanpaa gone? So the Ducks pairings tonight were Fowler, Walensky, because Walensky coming in for Hakanpaa, who just got traded, Drysdale with Manson, and then Larson and Shattenkirk, and Larson coming in for Hutton, who got traded to the Leafs. Do you guys have any issues with Drysdale on his offside? Because I honestly don't. I really don't see a problem with it at all.
I think it is the right decision given who the other ones are. I think if Kevin Shattenkirk was comfortable playing the left side, he'd have been doing it for a while already. I think given the roster decision or giving the guys in the lineup that they had, I think they knew they were going to have 4 right-hand shots, and the most skilled of those right-hand shots just also happens to be the 19-year-old kid. I do think once Haydn Fleury comes in and once everything starts to move forward, especially with knowing Lindholm's not coming back, I do imagine we are going to see a Flurry Drysdale pair. I do think that's a thing that might happen. But for now, I think Drysdale's the one guy that I would be the most comfortable with playing on his offhand side just because of how skilled he is, how well he skates, and he's done a good job on that side already. So I don't think they need to run away from it. And I don't think it's permanent. Yeah.
Be good.
I think a lot of this
I
changes.
don't have any fear with this kid plays. You could put him at forward. I'd be like, I don't see why you're doing that, but I think he'd be good at it.
He's no Hunter Drew. You can't play him at forward.
Right.
But honestly, like, I have no issue with this because I honestly think it changes next year. If Hampus Lindholm was healthy, do we really think we're playing Jamie Drysdale on the left side of the ice? I don't think so, because the top is going to be Fowler and Lindholm, and then you've likely got Manson and Shattenkirk who pair up with those guys. So Fowler, Shattenkirk, or Lindholm, Shattenkirk, and then the remainder with Manson, and then it's Drysdale with Haydn Fleury or Jacob Larson. I think that's how it goes. You can't criticize.
Don't put him with Jacob Larson. Don't be like that.
Just knowing the Ducks and where they're going to pair guys with, you would know he would be at the bottom.
If everybody's healthy, I'm telling you right now, they play him with Hampus Lindholm. No question.
Which would be great. It would be great, and I can see that happening. And the thing is, like, I don't think them playing Drysdale with Manson and playing Drysdale on his left was something that they planned on doing long term. But then all of a sudden they just worked together, and it was just a pairing that worked. And now they're going up against the opposition's top offensive weapons every night and doing a good job. And to the extent that we saw Jamie Drysdale on the penalty kill for the first time all season, and I know that's kind of it's a necessity at this point when you've got Larson and Walensky in the lineup and Shattenkirk, who's not really a great penalty killer, and you've got to throw somebody on that second unit. So Jamie Drysdale kind of is the guy who gets tagged into it at that point. But
I still think you should play Getzlaf at defense.
That's a whole nother question right there on the legitimacies of playing Getzlaf at D. I can see it, but no. But beyond this season, I think Jamie Drysdale goes back to the right side of defense when everybody's healthy. When you've got Lindholm, Fowler, Flurry, Shattenkirk, Manson, Drysdale, that's 3 lefties, 3 righties. I would assume he'd go back to the right side, and all of this will be forgotten.
Is COVID the best thing to happen to Jamie Drysdale's career?
Yep.
Making sure we're on the same page.
Early signs point towards being yes, because otherwise he'd be playing in Erie right now.
And I'd hate to say that because it sounds terrible to say, but like, really, we would have never seen this kid at all. It's like not that COVID's great at all, but it's pretty cool we get to see him come out and play.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm not convinced 5 years from now we're not sitting here saying COVID was the best thing to happen to the Ducks because it got Deckers and Drysdale up in the lineup. Like, for real. Like, there's a lot to be said for how odd this situation is and how much it goes against everything Anaheim has typically done, that we really might have found, the pot of gold as far as the end of that shit rainbow.
I mean, the same can be said for Jacob Perreault as much as it is for Jamie Drysdale. Like, both of these guys,
that's a great one. Yeah.
Both of these guys wouldn't have got AHL time. They both would be back in the OHL. Perreault with Sarnia and Drysdale with Erie. Perreault has 11 points in 16 games with the Gulls. He came back from injury. He's got 2 goals and 5 assists, I think, in 5 or 6 games. And he's got 9 points or 7 points since coming back from injury. A guy who'll probably get, or at least should get, an NHL look in the last few games of the season. I highly doubt the OHL is going to have a season this year. The Ontario's on lockdown until the beginning of May. It just wouldn't make sense at this point. But to think that these 2 guys would have had to be back in the OHL, if not in the NHL this year, it's drawing a positive from a shitty situation, sure, but it's great for their development to see, and it begs the question going forward: is the CHL NHL agreement something that the NHL really wants to continue doing, because it's made the American Hockey League must-see TV for a lot of hockey fans when you think that their top prospects are playing in that league. Like, how many of us bought AHL TV to watch Zegras and Drysdale this year? I know I was one of those people. I wouldn't have bought it without it. I maybe would have bought it to see
I
Zegras.
used someone else's login.
But, you're watching it, right? You're watching the games. And I'm sure you look at Winnipeg Jets fans. Cole Perfetti would be playing in the OHL this year, but he's playing in the AHL. He's doing really well. And I'm sure there's a lot of Manitoba Moose fans that are watching those games that normally wouldn't have. And
Future Anaheim Duck Cole Perfetti.
Yeah, it's excellent for the league to have more eyes on the AHL. And it's great for player development to not force them to go back to a league that they're not going to gain anything from and play against, top competition. And it's not just Drysdale and Zegras and Perreault. There's plenty of other examples from around the league at guys who benefited heavily from not having to go back to junior hockey this year. Now, there's always going to be the Braden Tracys who had 0 points in 12 AHL games go back to junior and they needed it. But there's going to be the guys like Zegras and Drysdale who benefit a lot from being able to play professional hockey this year when they normally wouldn't have been able to.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys excited to do another late night show on Wednesday?
Love these 7:30, 10:30 starts.
Beautiful.
Against the Sharks. It's always great. It's almost 3 a.m. here, so love it.
Well, let's wrap that up then. Eddie, you're in the future. You're in tomorrow. Stephen and I are very curiously waiting to see what happens in the next day, as you already know all the happenings. But tonight was fun. Sorry if I kind of ran us in a circle a bit. I was very fired up about Bob Berry today, clearly, as you guys know. But, hey, the Ducks won tonight. That was a nice little icing on the cake there. Raquel had a nice goal. It was pretty. And anytime you can beat the Sharks, we always like doing that. But we'll be back on Wednesday. I don't know who's on the show other than Steven's not. So
yeah, I won't be here on Wednesday.
We'll definitely figure that out.
Jay might be making his return.
Jay might make his return now.
Yeah, we'll see.
He should have been here tonight. I'm disappointed.
Pat Solo show Wednesday? What?
Pat Solo show on Wednesday.
We'll see what happens.
That's what I heard. I'm just saying.
That's the information coming down the pipeline. All right, I got to talk to our upper management about that. I don't know if I love it, but thanks everybody for tuning in on a late night. We love you guys. Thanks for the support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye, everybody.